Right, good morning, hello, good day. My name's Judy Sharp, and I am delighted to have with me today an old friend of mine. Shouldn't say old, he's younger than me. Mark Wentworth, Mark the Colour Man. Mark, welcome. Hi.
Hi, good morning.
We've just been talking about how long we've known each other, and you've told me it's 21 years. That is really quite scary, isn't it?
I know. Yep. It all started at Faro International Airport 21 years ago.
My goodness. At that time, I was living and working in the Algarve, and I was associated with a centre that did all sorts of lovely alternative things. And part of my remit was to organise people to come down to the Algarve and do workshops. And somebody had given me the name of Mark and said he might be interested. Why don't you get in touch with him and see? So I got in touch. I emailed and said, "You don't know me. My name's Jude. I live in the Algarve. Do you fancy coming down for a weekend?" And he said, "Oh, I suppose so. Why not?" And that was it. I met you at Faro Airport,
Yep.
and and then you came and lived in the Algarve.
I know, kind of like, yes, kind of like that was the beginning. That meeting at the airport was I went to the Algarve for a week and stayed for 14 years.
It does have that effect on
It
people. I
does.
went there originally
Yeah.
to house sit for 3 weeks, and I stayed for 20 years.
Yep,
It's
exactly. Yeah.
extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah. And I remember, Judy, it was you who introduced me to Tosta Mista. We went straight from the airport to Quatera and we walked along the front and we sat and had coffee or Maya del, uh, Maya
Italy.
del- and a Tosta Mista. You said, "Oh, you must try a Tosta Mista." And that equally
Absolutely.
was the beginning of,
Tosta toasted
yeah.
cheese and ham sandwich,
Oh,
slathered with butter, a million calories a go, and worth every
yeah.
mouthful. Oh
Yes.
my goodness. Yes, yes. And we were just saying our journeys have gone all over the place since then. We might touch on Berlin a little bit
Yeah.
later, but
Yeah.
Mark's journey has all been about color. Now you started your website tells me you've been working and studying with the transformational power of color for more than 30 years now. How did you get started and what got you into it, and where you came in, which if I remember, it was something to do with makeup. I think you were to do with theatrical makeup or something. And then you've ended up here, which is an amazing, unique position of working with color like nobody I know. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so it did. Kind of nowadays there seems to be a lot of pressure about what are you going to do? Certainly for young people. I don't know whether you agree with this, but there
Yeah.
seems to be so much pressure for young people that they need to know what they're going to do and the journey they're going to take. I don't think I would do terribly well if I was young now.
No, me neither. Me neither.
I had no idea what I wanted to do. I knew what I didn't want to do. Um, and so I knew I wanted to travel. That's what I didn't know how it was going to be, but I knew I wanted to travel. Um, and in that, kind of found myself kind of, and along with that, I met people who were doing makeup and they said, "Oh, would you be a model for it?" And it was like, yeah, hey, whatever. So, and then I said, oh, this is really good. And then I've literally studied for makeup in but special effects,
Mm.
TV and film special effects makeup. It was great because I think what I enjoyed more was the teacher because he'd worked in all the films, during the 50s and 60s. He'd worked with people like kind of Catherine Hepburn on
Oh,
African
wow.
Queen. He'd worked with Marilyn Monroe when she came to England. He'd worked on all the early James Bond films. So it was worth, it was one of these courses that was worth doing it for the teacher because of the stories.
Oh gosh, yes.
And what I noticed is, you've got people sitting in a chair for a long time because it's kind of special effects. So you've got kind of prosthetics and all kinds of things. And I found that I really enjoyed chatting to people and talking to them, but equally noticing the difference that color made to them when you were adding all these different shades and tones
Mm,
in
yeah.
how you could change someone's look. Also, I was interested in the whole kind of mind, body, spirit thing, although I didn't think it was called then. I think it was called, it was called the New Age, it was more
Oh,
fashionable.
new
New
age.
Age, the New
New
Age.
age. Yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah.
that was my, I used to hang out at all these mind, body, spirit exhibitions. Um, and I met people who were doing color. Um, and I was thinking, this is really interesting. And I remember when I was talking to the lady who was later to become my teacher, it was like she was talking a language which I kind of knew, but
Mm,
didn't know. If you know, she spoke to something much deeper, and I said, "This is what I want to do," and I had no idea. So literally, yeah, I trained in TV and film makeup, special effects, but I probably done about a couple. I did probably a few jobs, but that was about it.
mm.
It was also at the time that if you want to be in the makeup, if you want to work in TV and film, you had to be a union member. But to be a
Oh,
union
of
member,
course.
you had to work. And to work, you had to be a union member. So it's this real catch-22 situation.
Yeah.
Um, so I didn't do that. And then I started studying and working with color. So then it all just started going in a whole new direction. And it was probably the first time, excuse me, it was probably the first time in education, in my educational history, where I was actually getting kind of my essays marked and doing my homework and getting sort of like the lowest score I think I ever got was about 78, whereas the average was more
Oh,
like 92, 93%.
wow.
And my
Wow.
teacher was saying, but you asking questions that come kind of in the kind of the advanced module. And it was just like, it just was so natural.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so, you know, that thing then where people say is like, we don't learn anything new. We're just kind of taught to remember.
Remember. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
That's how I would describe when I was learning about color.
How
So
fabulous is that?
it just felt this sort of natural, and it's like, well, yeah, of course it does that.
Mm, how
So
lovely. And it's taken you on this journey, which has evolved through the psychology of color, and you've evolved your own courses, and you now teach all over the world, and you are a color ambassador for, oh, prompt, come on, who are you a color ambassador for?
well, no, I'm a brand. If you're talking, so I'm a color ambassador or brand ambassador for Valspar Paints here in the
That's it.
UK. Yeah.
That's it.
So basically,
Yes.
anytime anytime they do anything a little bit kind of a little bit quirky, a little bit sort of on the edge to do with color, they call me.
Fabulous.
So yeah, and you know that because so basically, if you look on my probably as you saw on my website, it says kind of global color ambassador.
Yes.
It's do you know it's one of those things that it's not. Believe me, it's kind of people say, well, that's a bit egoic, that's a bit egotistical because you da da
Mm,
da. But believe me, it was literally it came in a dream. You know when you're just sort of sleeping and you're just on the verge of waking up, that in
yeah.
between state. And someone just said to me very clearly, "You are the color ambassador." And I was like, "Really?" And it took me 4 years to be
Wow.
able to be able to comfortably say it because
Yeah.
people said, "Oh, what's your time?" And I go, "Oh no," really kind of trying not to. So,
Yeah.
and it was only through, let's say, like working with someone like mentoring, coaching to feel comfortable. And then, interestingly, someone wrote an article, and because they knew I travel a lot, they put global before it. And somehow that suddenly seemed so much easier to say.
Yeah.
Global color ambassador sounds so much easier to say and sits more comfortable with me rather than just say color ambassador.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's a journey. It's not something, it's not a title that I took easily.
I can imagine, but it does fit. It sits with you totally, and it encapsulates everything that you do, because you do go all over the world, whether it's via Zoom nowadays or whether it's physically all over the world.
Yeah.
And you do, an ambassador is somebody who waves the flag, and you wave the flag for color. You explain to people exactly what it is, how it influences their lives, whether they realize it or not, and
Yeah.
how they can work with it and use it and so on. And I mean, I know your work is much deeper. We might not get into that today. We might have to come back to that. But I I just think it's fascinating. A global color ambassador. I like that. So, Mr. Global Color Ambassador, 2021 is a
Yeah,
blue year.
it
What does
is.
that mean? How do you know it's a blue year? What does that mean? And what are the
Yeah.
implications?
So how we know it's a blue year is using, so I use the medium of numbers. Some people stop at numbers and work with numerology. I use the medium of numbers to get to color, because each
Yep.
number between 1 and 9 relates to a color. So if we add two, let's say 221, it's so 2021, it's 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 1, which comes out as 5, and in turn 5 equals blue. So that's how I know, let's say, wherever we celebrate 2021, because obviously in different cultures they have different dates, but let's say, is it in the Gregorian calendar? I think it's, is that what it's called? The
I think
Gregorian
so.
calendar. Yeah,
Mhm.
so in the Gregorian calendar, we are in the year 2021, which in
Yeah.
turn comes out as a blue year.
And that's working on the chakras. Yeah.
Mm,
You're going there
yeah,
with the
yeah,
chakras.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's
Okay.
9 colors in total, and so people get a bit confused, and they, because most people know about the 7 chakras, and they
Yeah.
say, well, what about number 8 and number 9? There are some beliefs which say, well, there's there's above the crown chakra, there's the star chakra, then there's this chakra. I kind of like things and keep things simple, because we could say there's 144, or is it 144, 152 chakras?
144,000, I'm told, but
Yeah,
yes,
and it's
yeah.
like, let's just stick with 7.
Yes. So you've got 7. Yes. Okay. That'll
Yeah.
do.
Okay. So when it comes to, kind of, and just to tell the numbers, because I'm sure people will be saying, well, okay, so what numbers, what numbers? So 1 to 7 are the 7 colors of the rainbow.
Yep.
1 is red, 2 is orange, 3 is yellow, 4 is green, 5 is blue, 6 is indigo, 7 is violet, and number 8 in the system I work with is rose, and number 9 is gold.
Okay.
So, um, and rose and gold connect. Rose connects with the base chakra, and gold connects with the second chakra. So, in the system I work with, we just simply work with 7 chakras.
Okay.
So we can say, okay, this year, so we can look and say, okay, we can look at the world and say, okay, what's going to happen? What are we going to see? What are the energies are we
Mm.
working with in 2021? I kind of find it interesting that last year we were in a green year. And green, obviously, if you know about the chakras, it's the heart chakra, but it also governs the lungs.
Okay.
So if you think of everything we're dealing with at the moment, the whole kind of the pandemic, COVID, which affects the lungs, so you kind
Yeah.
of go, it's awful as it sounds. It's like, well, that was very green.
Yes.
you know
Yes.
in the say, it's like, well, we lived up to our green year.
Yes. Yeah.
um and you can take it on so many different levels. If you think green, okay, the main thing we see in green is its connection with nature, and then we look at the forests and say, okay, they're regarded as the lungs of the earth, and then we see what's happening environmentally. So
Yeah.
if collectively we're taking away the lungs of the earth from a green perspective, then we are in a way more prone to almost like airborne or viruses which affect our respiratory system.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's
Yeah.
not
Absolutely.
it's for me, I'm kind of, I always look at things from a real kind of sort of like from a what do you call it, almost like a transpersonal, a collective level, to see
Yes.
what's playing out collectively.
Yes. Yes. I think that's an important point, isn't it? And I've noticed it a lot during the lockdown. Is this reflection of whatever's happening to us internally is also
Mhm.
what's happening out there. So
Yeah,
last year was green, and that makes a lot of sense about the lungs, and
yeah,
this is where it's all
yeah,
going. And now we've morphed into blue.
yeah.
So what does that mean?
So coming into blue, obviously, if we know about the throat chakra, it's all about the throat. So we can say, well, okay, blue is a blue year is going to be a lot about communication.
Yeah.
But what do we mean? What do we mean by communication? You know, kind of one thing about communication is also not just about speaking, but it's about listening.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I would say that there's a lot we need to actually adapt. You know, I would say because of everything that's happening in the world, there's so much kind of divisions and kind of different viewpoints that probably it would be a good idea to actually develop the art of listening, because very often we listen in order to reply.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So whilst
Yeah.
you're saying something to me, already got my answer. I'm already thinking about my answer. So therefore, I'm not listening to what you're actually saying.
Mm. Yeah. And
So
as the wise man said, we've got two ears and one mouth, and actually we
mhm,
should use them in that proportion, shouldn't we,
yeah,
really?
yeah, yeah. So
Mm.
and also, I do think that it's also about communication and listening, but it's also about listening to our internal communication.
Yeah.
Because if have a lot of negative chatter, if I'm not paying attention to that, then it's going to affect my well-being.
Yes.
Because if I've
Yeah.
got all this internal negative chatter, which is telling me to be fearful, to kind of which that in turn is going to, in a way, kind of affect my um, energy levels. Going to affect my,
Absolutely.
it's going to affect my physiological level. It's going to affect my whole my body in a way.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a lot going on about that at the moment, because for me personally, a lot of fear and confusion is being stirred up
Yep.
deliberately. There are
Mhm.
those that would have us stay in this whole pea soup of being confused and anxious for
Yep.
for whatever reason. We won't go there. And I think it's also a time where we are being encouraged energetically to look at all this stuff and almost to clear it out, so that we get the clear blue, if you like, so that we get that clarity. What is it they call it? Blue sky thinking. We get the clarity and we see the bigger picture almost.
Yep. And
So
also, blue is also
well,
about truth and honesty.
yes, very much so.
Yep.
Very much
And so
so.
in a way, it's about being truthful. I would say the first place is about being truthful and honest with ourselves.
Yes. Yes.
Kind of start there.
Yes, I totally agree. So as the year unfolds, how do you see a blue year playing out? How do you see this year playing out? Do you see the big changes that people are talking about? Do you see big energetic type changes?
Um, Well, kind of blue is also a midway point. It's kind of if we talk about the chakra system, we get the inspiration coming down from, from the collective,
Yep.
whatever you want to term. Like when I talk, some people would say it's the spiritual realm, some people say it's the higher realms. I think of the collective, which is Jung termed the collective unconscious. So everything, and we pick up on that. And then but it comes down, and it comes down through this chakra, and it comes to here, and this is the almost like the distilling point.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And so, it's the point of like, well, okay, what happens here? How do I decide to act upon it? What do I do? What do I decide to do with it? Do I do? And sometimes, there's that phrase is, once upon a time, a wise man said nothing.
Nothing. Yes, absolutely. Yes. But it's so true, isn't it? And I think there's another aspect to that, which is that, as you've said, all this stuff is coming in from the collective. And to me, that is like all sorts of stuff are becoming, we are becoming aware of all sorts of dark stuff in all sorts of areas. The pillars of society are crumbling and all of that. We're becoming much more aware of stuff that perhaps we have chosen not to see it before. And now we have got to look at it. So it's coming down in this pea soup of consciousness. We've got to look at it. And then we've got to decide what we want to do with it. What are we going to say about it? What are we going to do about it? Are we going to say nothing and let it continue? Or are we actually going to speak the truth, as you say, speak the truth, be honest about it and say, actually, no. So it is interesting, isn't it? So there is a time to say nothing, but there is also a time when you just have to say enough already, or this is not what I prepare to accept. And I get a sense that we are in that sort of transformation at the moment. It is interesting.
And also I think kind of with blue, because also it's one of the most commonly associated colors to do with healing.
Yes, very much.
So very, very, kind of, I'm always saying to people, when they're talking about color healing, and it's like, well, if in doubt, use blue.
Yes.
Because it's as a color, so it's very key, it's very healing, it's very nurturing and nourishing. And so in that sense about the truth, sometimes it's that sense of the cold, hard truth can be the most nourishing, nurturing truth, even though it doesn't necessarily feel like it at the time.
Yeah. I think that's true. It is that I am a blue. My life path color is blue. And it's very interesting when I was going through my wardrobe this morning and saying, oh, what should I wear? Instinctively, I went for blue. Not just in honor of you, but because that's what I was drawn to. And I think it is true, isn't it, that we are drawn to the colors. And I think as a collective, it is in this year about truth, but also nurturing ourselves as well. We've had to nurture ourselves through this whole pandemic, looking after ourselves, looking after our own well-being and so on. So that is and that actually leads on talking about well-being and looking after ourselves and nurturing. Broaden it out a bit. Color in wellness, color in well-being, color in our everyday lives, how the colors that we surround ourselves with can either build us up or bring us down. Talk a little bit about that, please.
So sorry. Well, first of all, I would say most people are colorblind. Not actually from the physical sense. And what I mean by that is colorblind is we only pay attention to it either when we decide what we're going to wear or what colors we're going to decorate with. And apart from that, oblivious. And yet it's this thing that's with you literally from the moment you're born until the day you leave this world. And in some belief systems will say it, and it will follow you into the afterlife too. And this one, so it's the one constant in our life is color. Because it's with you all the time. And we become,
take so much for granted, of course, don't we? We don't, we just look around and we don't actively notice what colors we're looking at unless something jumps out at us, or as
Yeah.
you say, you know, what color frock do I want, or what color do I paint that wall, what color curtains do I want. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. And so, you know, unless of course you work in marketing, advertising, then it's quite, you know, it's something like 92% of our buying choices is based on color. So
Wow.
literally a color can make or break a brand or a
Wow.
product.
Wow.
And
Wow.
we choose colors which support our the story that we tell about ourselves.
Yes.
The colors we choose colors which support the let's say the image and the story that we tell about our envisioned future.
Okay.
So we buy colors, brands, products which support of who we are and who we want to become. And it's that's how advertising marketing works so well.
I'm aware of a little bit of that, but I'm interested to know how we decide colors about who we want to become. Expand on that a little bit.
So, for example, in let's take cars for example.
Mm.
Yep, you know, they found that people who have people who have comfortably feel that they're comfortably, let's say, financially, materially successful, comfortable, or you know, and so choices will be color choices will be more towards, let's say, burgundy, maroons, dark greens, racing greens, because we associate those. I think you remember this with the burger, the burger example, and it still stands of a burger stand of in New York, two burger stands, maybe 100 meters apart, maybe a bit more than that. I measure size. So anyway, a distance apart, but they can still see each other. So like one here, one here. One was they used bright red in all the advertising, all the signs. This one darker red, and they interviewed people who went to both stands and said, why did you choose that one, why not that one? And people said, well, they choose the light red one because they weren't, so they knew it would be cheaper than this one, and also they weren't so interested, they just wanted a burger, and they thought they'd be, whereas people who chose this one were more interested in the quality and prepared to pay more.
And actually, what you haven't said, but what you've told me, is that the burgers were exactly the same in
Exactly,
both.
exactly the same.
Exactly the same. So it is the perception of the
Yep,
color
yep,
that
yep,
decides, do we want cheap and cheerful, or do we
yep,
actually want to make the more mature, the classy
exactly.
decision, because I deserve that.
Yep,
Yeah, it is
yep,
interesting, isn't it?
yep.
How does that feed into our overall
So,
wellness and well-being day to
yep.
day?
So first of all, is that interesting to think about, you know, we're constantly telling ourselves stories about who we want to be. Whatever our age, we're always envisioning the future of our future life story. You know, there's a trajectory, and
Yeah.
we have a vision of where that's going to be, of, you know, kind of what that's going to look like.
Hmm.
And in that, when you start breaking it down, it's got certain shades and tones of color. Even though people are not very conscious of that, it does have. If you sit down and you actually start looking at it and breaking it down, and you start saying, well, what color is this? What color is around you? You will notice specific shades and tones. That's what I call telling your color story.
Okay.
Um, so, and sometimes we need to tell another story. You know, sometimes
Yeah.
it's an interesting, you know, it's an interesting exercise to ask yourself, if my life were a genre in film, what would it be? You know, tragic comedy, romantic comedy, horror or
A bit
thriller,
of the
or
Wild West, maybe. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
or kind of rom-com, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, it's an interesting of what genre of film would your life go into?
I like that. I like that. Yeah.
And maybe it has been a bit of a horror, but you want to change it into kind of a romance and they all lived happily ever after.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
What an interesting question. Yeah. Okay.
because it's quite you when you start thinking about it, and breaking it down and say, okay, maybe it's kind of an adventure. Okay, but what kind of adventure?
Mm, mm,
Okay, it's
mm.
romantic comedy, but okay, what kind of romantic comedy? And who is the comedy about? Is it where you're laughing at yourself, which is not always a good thing? We can laugh at ourselves, but
Yeah.
not nothing about, you know. Anyway, so where color fits into this is you can very simply say, well, okay, if we talked about take it from the beginning, let's say well-being, take it from the point of view of, well, first of all, it's defining what well-being means to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But once you've got your sense of what does well-being mean for me, you can then take it and say, well, okay, what color is my well-being? And whatever it is, if it's yellow with pink spots, so be it. If it's, kind of red zigzaggy lines, so be it.
Mm-hmm.
As long as it means something and that is what it means to you. Um, and then you can either have that color around you, doesn't mean you have to decorate with it, but you can just have it around in different forms. If you are, excuse me, if you're kind of creative, you could draw it, you could make anything from it. If you don't want to do that, you could look on the internet to find an image of it. And because we spend so much time on our computers and cell phones or mobile phones, you could put it as your screen save.
Yeah. Yeah.
So every time you look at it, there it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And
And
is that then, are you saying that when we think about well-being for us, and I understand it's a very individual thing,
yeah,
our unconscious, our subconscious translates that into a color and presents it to us and says, okay, what I need for my well-being on the inside, what I need, feed
yeah,
me, pink, yellow, blue. Is that what you're saying, really?
exactly. Yep. And
Okay.
also, it may change
Yeah.
because life changes, we change, nothing is static. So it may be, let's say, my yellow with pink spots on Monday, but by the time I get to Friday, it might be something completely different. It may be sky blue.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
because if you accept the thing that we're a living organism
Yeah.
made up of all these cells, energy, etc., on all levels, it's constantly in flow.
Yeah.
So when we say instead of staying with one color, if we allow it to change, but not forcibly change it, and the important thing is if it's a color that shows up and you go, oh, I wish it was another color, don't change it. Stay
Mm,
with that. Because
mm,
otherwise saying you is basically what you're saying in a very blue simplified manner is I know more than the universe.
yes. Yeah. I can remember once, a million years ago now, we were both in the Algarve and I had a session with you, a proper working session. And you said to me, what is your least favorite color?
Yeah,
And I told you,
yeah,
and it was a particular shade of what sort of limey, sludgy green at the time,
yeah,
because that's changed too.
yeah,
And I can remember thinking, what a funny question. Why isn't he asking me what my favorite color is? Why is he asking me what my least favorite color is?
Yep.
And you said, what happened to you when you were about, was it 5 or 6, something like that? And there had been an event, there had been a trauma in my childhood around that time, and it went straight there, and it was like whack, and we were straight there. And I can remember thinking after that session, my goodness, that really is the power of color that gets right to the heart of what's going on inside. And it is
Yep.
what's inside that is showing up and asking to be dealt with.
Yep. Because the thing of color is a refraction of light. And you think about it,
Yes.
everything happens at the speed of light.
Yeah.
So when you
Yeah.
work with color, people, that's why it makes me smile when people say, what do you do? And I say, oh, I work with color. And they go, oh, that's nice. And they have this idea that it's this very kind of fluffy, blah, 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 and it's like, you have no idea.
Absolutely.
You know
Absolutely.
how I was talking about this yesterday, actually, how you can show someone, let's say, a beautiful turquoise blue. Let's say, you know, the color of the swimming pools in the Algarve, or the color of
Yeah.
the sea in the Algarve, that beautiful, and the color of the sky. And I remember showing someone that color, this beautiful kind of, let's say, swimming pool blue. And someone saying, oh yes, that reminds me of kind of like, let's say, you know, for her it was kind of like the Mediterranean, it was the Greek islands. And yet this other lady sat there, and tears were just rolling, and she said, this just makes me feel so cold, so sad, and so alone.
Wow. Wow.
So
That's,
it is
and actually
very
that is a wonderful segue, because you're talking about blue. We were talking earlier about blue and how it's actually quite a favorite color, isn't it? And you're doing little workshops on it.
yeah,
For the love of blue. Can I
yes,
give a little advert for your workshops on blue? Because it is a blue year, Mark is doing a series of workshops to allow us all to explore blue. He's just given a wonderful example of how the same color can mean different things to different people. And I know from my own experience, having worked with Mark, you really do dive into it, and it is quite extraordinary. So the next one, as we record this in early April 2021, is on the 25th of April, and it's from 4:30 to 7:30 over the wonderful power of Zoom. And it's just £40 for
yeah,
a deep dive into blue. And there will be others during the year. And all of the details of that will be on www.colorforlife.com. And leading on from that, I think we ought to do the other advert for the book. Tell us a little bit about the book. This is Mark's.
so
I always call it the Little Book of Color. I see somebody's actually just brought out a book that they've called the Little Book of Color. This is not it. This is the original. This is the one to get.
yeah,
Add
okay,
a Little Color to Your Life by Mark Wentworth.
yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the book, Mark.
So let me tell the history of the book, because it is true. There is someone has brought out a book called The Little Book of Color, but anyway, that's a
That's not this one.
that's not that one. Um, Inspired by this one. Anyway,
That's a polite way of putting it, I'm sure. But
yeah.
yes,
Anyway,
I'll hold this
so,
one up while you talk.
yeah. So back in 1998, which is when I first wrote it, it's been
Yeah,
added to that. Basically, people were saying, is there a good little book on color which covers different areas? And there wasn't. So I sat down and wrote it. And that's what Add a Little Color to Your Life is. It talks about the different areas of color. It gives you almost like an intro. It's only 60 pages,
yeah,
and it talks about the, healing aspects of color, color in your kind of everyday life, color in decor, a little bit about clothing,
yeah,
about the chakras, and also probably the half of the book is more about what is your life path color, which is what you were talking about a moment ago, Judy, that your color is blue. And it's
Yes.
how each of us have our own personal color. Everyone has their own color. And based on that, it tells you about your personality, your characteristics, and also about when you know your color, you can use more of that color. And again, I would say it's a color for well-being, because it brings you back into alignment with yourself.
Yeah.
And since then, so many people so many people have been inspired by it. It's now it's in English, it's in French, it's in Greek, it's in Portuguese, it's in Spanish, it's in no, I missed out the it's in Romanian, and it's in Turkish.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow. That is
Yep.
very impressive, isn't it?
Yeah.
That is
Yep.
very impressive. So
Yep.
let's just round up, perhaps. I've mentioned life path colors. We've talked about the fact that it's in here. It talks about your life path color. Just tell people how they work out their own life path color.
Yep. So full date of birth, always include the 19, or if you're born now in 2000, it's always the 20. So because some people yes, because sometimes people think they put, so like mine is 12/4/64, so but you always include the 19.
1964,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, but then you treat each number as a single digit. So like for instance, so 12/4/1964 then becomes 1 plus 2 plus 4 plus 1 plus 9 plus 6 plus 4, which comes out as 27. But then you keep on adding it together until it comes out as a number between 1 and 9. So 2 plus 7 is 9. And then we know that, like I said, that each number then relates to a color. So just to recap on the colors, 1 is red, 2 is orange, 3 is yellow, 4 is green, 5 is blue, 6 is indigo, 7 is violet, 8 is rose, and 9 is gold. So we know now you know that my color is gold.
Yep. Yep. And I will read, if I may, just a little bit from the gold here, because it is lovely. Look, a gold life path is one of a natural teacher, which I think is just lovely. You were born wise, and from an early age, people around you would tell you their concerns and worries. And I think that's true. I mean, there's more in here, but it is absolutely lovely. It sums up perfectly. You're gold, I'm blue, and once you understand that language of color, you can see how it does fit in. So
because I would say it's really, I would just say that it's been where people have found it not only for themselves, but especially in time like during lockdown, so many people have said when they bought it or they found out their color, it really helped them deal with, let's say, kind of family dynamics. If you're in, let's say, if you've been in lockdown with people, which normally you wouldn't be, you need to understand the different color dynamics, and you can help to navigate that, especially if with young people. This is not, it's not been easy for anyone, but specifically for young people, if by knowing, this is the feedback that I've had, is that by knowing your color, it's certainly helping parents understand how to help them and the young people actually navigate their own, I would say, mental health.
that is a really good point. That is a really, really good point. So it's not just, do I buy a blue frock or a pink frock, and am I gold, so I want a gold statue in my hall, or am I green, so I have lots of green plants around? I think that's a really good point, is that it does have very practical, powerful at an inner and outer level. So Mark, let's just run through that again. Blue workshops are going to be running all through the year, because we're in a blue year, and because blue is one of the colors we all interact with. Next one, 25th of April, 4:30 to 7:30 over Zoom, £40 for that. All of the information is on www.colourforlife.com. This
And
fabulous book
and just to
is,
say, for is FOR, and color is the English spelling of color.
yes, thank you. Yes, absolutely. Yes, we do put a U in colour. We put the U into colour. So
Exactly.
yes, colour for FOR, colour
Yep.
COLOUR. Yes, thank you.
Yep.
Here's the book. How much is the book?
Gosh, I think it's $5.95 on Amazon, because you can get it on. You can either buy the hard copy on. Everything's on Amazon at the moment.
It is.
So
Yes.
you can either buy it as a Kindle, as an ebook,
Yeah.
or you can buy
I
it
think,
as a hard
yeah,
copy.
£6
Yeah,
is what I was going to say for this one.
yeah,
So
yeah,
in
yeah,
round terms,
yeah,
I think it's £6 on Amazon, and worth it. It's a
yeah.
lovely little prezi. It's a lovely little stocking filler. Is there anything else that we should have talked about that we haven't? I mean, I know there's a million things that we could talk about, and we'll do that in another talk, because I want to go deep into the psychology of color and so on. But I think as an introduction, I think we've done quite well.
Yeah, I would kind of say, think of it like this. If you want to change your life or simply enhance the life you're already living, the answer is very simple, and that is add a little color to your life.
I love that. Mark the Colour Man Wentworth, thank you so much for being here today. I'm Judy Sharp. I hope we see you again soon. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye. Bye.